Okay, welcome everyone to the webinar. I'm going to kick this off. And so I'm excited on this topic, very different than what we normally speak on. I'm off talking about tickets and huddles and Kanban projects. And we're going to be getting into MSP sales and why it's nothing like selling IT projects. And yeah, and so I'll introduce our guest here shortly, Garth. But yeah, we'll have hopefully a bit of time at the end. It'll be a lot of content. And once I get Garth started, I know we'll keep going. So, uh, but I've learned a lot from him. So yeah, use the Q&A and we'll get to those maybe as we go along, but probably at the end. We'll save about 10 minutes there. I'm going to kick off the poll. If I still remember how to do this in Zoom, polls. I'll launch that. So there'll be some questions there that you can answer and we'll share the feedback. And we love engagement. So pop in the chat where you're connecting from, perhaps what your role is and what do you want to learn? Why are you interested? Why are you here today? So pop in the chat below and we'd love to see that light up with what you want to learn. So I'm Wim, the founder of Top Left and owner of 2 MSPs here in Canada, Crafty Penguins and Improving IT. And started it because we need it in our MSP and get to help hundreds of other companies with the same methods and tools today. And I met Garth, I think early last year. We were at an event together in Victoria, BC, and had a coffee and hit it off and been talking about MSP sales and reconnected again this year and in February. And I'm like, what you're sharing, like, okay, would you mind to repeat that on a webinar and share with our team and our clients? He's like, yeah, I would love to. So we've had some conversations and here we are. So he's a former MSP owner and grew his company. Well, he'll share a story. So, and of his journey there. So let's go into that. We got Ian from Oklahoma. Welcome. Welcome, Plaquila. Welcome, Thomas. Let's share your story here. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, over to you, Garth. Welcome. Thanks for joining and preparing this content.
You're welcome, Wim. Thanks for listening in, everyone. What I say on this webinar is going to assume that you know something about MSP sales, even if you've kind of struggled with it, that you know something about it, because a lot of it is going to assume that you have some context for what I'm saying. And I am aware that there's some new people that might have no context for what I'm saying, and we just don't have time in this webinar to dig into kind of why I'm saying stuff. Hopefully it'll still make sense. Anyway, so here we have in front of us, and this is kind of, I guess, an introduction to me, but it's also an introduction to our subject today. So I think that's why this slide is useful. That's our MRR growth trajectory there. And you can see it's pretty healthy starting in 2009. We were a break fix company before that. In fact, we were a break fix company from 2005. So, but our head count only started in 2007. So Wim, let's put the seats up as well. So this is what happened. You can see our MRR graph, and you can see our seats graph. Those are single seats. So in other words, the one on the far left at the bottom, that's where we had 2 people working in the company. Seats. This is customer seats, sorry. And on the left, I can't remember where that actually starts. If you hover over that, Wim, will it tell us the number that was?
Yep.
65 seats. And at the end, well, let's go to the peak in 2009, where it was, call it 600, 590, 595. So a pretty rapid rise in seat numbers and a proportionate rise in MRR. Thank God. Because if you have a rise in seats and you don't have a rise in MRR, you have trouble. And you can actually see that if you look further back in the graph. Look at 2011. You'll see our seats. Sorry, I keep talking about mixing up head count and my seat count. Let's put the head count on so that I stop screwing myself over here. This is our head count. So the yellow is the seat count. The blue is the MRR, and the red is our head count. This includes everyone, not just techs, but most of the people were techs. So you can see there our head count was growing, and then it spiked, and our MRR was actually flat. So guess what? We were losing money. It was terrible. And then we discovered Gary Pika, and we discovered like best in practice MSP activity, and started to really fine tune our help desk and get all kinds of tools to help us, like IT Glue, really activating our ConnectWise and stuff like that, making all our tools work. And our techs were starting to get the hang of it. And we also got professional operations management. You can probably see the operation was badly managed when I was managing it, and then started to be really well managed when we got professional operations management in there. And you can see that in the story of the graph, where our seats, our head count rapidly descends and our seat count goes up. That's our number of customer seats goes up in the yellow, and our head count comes down. And then you'll see our MRR kept rising, and our head count, our number of staff, stayed flat or relatively flat, which is MSP nirvana. If you see that in an MSP, you know that MSP has mastered the game. And this webinar is not about that. We could probably have 5 webinars on that. But that is the story. Now, that's the operational story, I guess. The sales story is, I guess, why that MRR kept growing like that. And you'll see that actually we doubled, and then we doubled again, and then we doubled again. So you're looking at 3 doubles. It's basically exponential, what was happening with the sales. And we will get into what was driving that.
I guess I should just jump in a little bit. I think it is really a sales story. And I talk to so many MSPs, like doing dinners and lunches and sales calls, everything. And you ask, hey, how's your marketing doing? How's your SEO working? And it seems like really hard to grow a business on the marketing alone. And it requires this sales effort. And yes, there's discipline and activity. There's more to it, which you're going to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have a different, I mean, Wim, if you're happy, I think we've kind of exhausted the first brush of what you can get from this slide. So what's our next thing? Because okay. So the bottom line on this is that MSP sales is not the same as selling a BMW or a refrigerator or a hyper-converged system or even a SharePoint migration. Those are all fixed items that a person either wants or they don't want. And they know they want one. If I crash my BMW, I go to the dealership and I say, I want a new BMW. I already know I want one. You just have to work out how to get it to me. That is standard sales. MSP sales, the salesman comes to the prospect and says, hey, this is what I do. And they go, oh, so you like respond to our tickets and help us fix our issues and stuff. We're good with that. Our guy is good with that. He responds to our phone calls, and he looks after us really well. So we're fine. And you then have to take that response, because you know they aren't fine. You know that maybe they have a one-man band and they're in a highly regulated industry. And there's no ways they're fine with that one-man band guy. But the decision maker who you're talking to thinks he's fine. And you can't just wade in there and tell him that he has no clue. That is not the way to sell anything to the guy. You have to gently come alongside him. And it's consultative sales, it's relationship building. And you have to come to him with some kind of authority where you can prove that in his industry, you are an authoritative IT organization, and that the one that he's working with right now does not necessarily have the same level of expertise. And then you have to convince him that he needs the expertise, but in a gentle way. So you do that by highlighting things like, if he's in a regulated industry, does he realize that he's meant to be doing certain things for compliance and stuff? And he'll say yes, usually because they want to tell you that they're on top of things and that they're in command of their business. But in fact, they know that they aren't most of the time. So you have to be gentle about that too. And you have to then say, oh, so you're compliant with this and this and this part of what your industry has to look after, say they're in healthcare or food manufacturing or something like that. And if you dig just a little bit below the surface, you see they start to kind of scramble a little bit. And then you gently lead them through getting to know you, getting to trust you, and getting to realize that you really are authoritative in this. The other guy that they're working with absolutely knows how to fix Microsoft 365 issues and change a password and even look after subnets on a network and all of that. But you need to prove that when he works with you, he gets business advantage. He gets not just his tech sort of fixed up, he gets business advantage. And that can be achieved by saving him cost, increasing his revenue, or reducing his risk. Those are the three things. You're looking at saving his cost, increasing his revenue, or reducing his risk. And most people that trying to sell MSP, Wim, are just trying to sell speeds and feeds. We're faster at picking up the phone. We're great at cybersecurity. When you say stuff like that, the guy's he's gone. He's scared of cybersecurity. He stops listening to you right away. You have to build your cybersecurity story gently into why it's so relevant for him. And usually you would use that. The path that you would use for that is by matching it up to stuff that you know about regulations in his industry and stuff like that. How's that, Wim? I'm aware that I mustn't carry on too much.
Yeah. No, that's good. We'll share the poll results, and then so you're aware of who's here, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, cool.
They should pop up on your screen. So we asked, do you have a dedicated sales team? And we've got a mix here. Some are just the owner, some are part-time, some are full-time, some are multiple. So we can speak to all here. Again, the things that Garth is sharing are from his particular MSP, a particular size. But I believe many of these things apply regardless of size. If we're under $1 million, the owner is doing it, or you're 10 plus million and you got multiple salespeople. It's the same math, same challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I was saying earlier about you're not selling him speeds and feeds, him or her speeds and feeds. You're selling them a business advantage. This is because the person that you're talking to when you're selling them MSP services is always very senior business person in the organization. It's the COO, it's the CEO, it's often or the CFO, or the owner themselves. So they're business people, and they're often scared of technology. So if you sell them speeds and feeds, you want to sell them speeds and feeds because as an IT salesperson, you're comfortable with that. You have to forget that, man. I'm sorry. You got to forget that. You can sell them projects like that. Absolutely, you can. And you probably wouldn't be talking to the CEO about projects. You'd be talking to someone lower down, maybe. Yeah. But you can't sell them MSP services because they're not interested in your speeds and feeds. That guy is top of the business. He's concerned about meeting payroll. He's concerned about his next quarter's P&L. He's concerned about business stuff. And unless you're talking to him about business advantage, which is reducing his risk, increasing his revenue, or reducing his costs, and you can show in a very credible way that your business is there to promote those things in his business, if you show that, you've got the beginning of a relationship with the guy. And by the way, he'll work this out in the first 5 minutes of you opening your mouth. So you've got to be really careful because you lose them fast. Because remember, they're busy. They're thinking of a reason why they don't want to talk to you. So you've got to give them a reason, and the best reason is to come alongside and to show them that you understand their business. And then I usually start out by dropping 1 or 2 little things that show I understand his business, and then I shut up and I let them talk. And often you can let a little period of silence happen in the conversation, because often they'll fill it. And yeah, it feels a bit awkward, but it starts to make them like regurgitate stuff. And if they know that you are a business-oriented IT person, they will start to tell you their real business issues. And then you can use your IT skill after the meeting. Just listen to his business issues. Don't tell him answers then. And don't go IT gobbledygook on the guy. Listen to him and then take it away. And then you know enough about IT to say, these 4 issues that he told me, the top 2, I can do nothing about. But this third one, we've got a solution for that. And then you can quietly, in a careful way, bring back a respectful, careful, and fast, come back to him with something that speaks to that precise issue. If you have a way of doing this with each prospect that you talk to, you will start to develop what I call business authority in that line of business.
Yeah.
And those people will then start to talk to their friends about you. They will say, this Garth guy, he really knows about like radiology IT or something. And the other radiologists that he's talking to be like, man, our IT guy, all he wants to talk about is Microsoft 365 all day. Let me talk to that guy. And you start to get a sort of a flywheel when you do that.
Yeah.
You want to move on to brutal math?
Yeah, I'm going to keep us moving. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I'm thinking of questions to ask you, right? With my experience, I'm like, no, let's go through it and we can always circle back.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So that was my rambling answer to the question of why is selling MSP different to selling regular stuff, be it IT stuff, be it cars, be it refrigerators. Why is it different? Well, it's different because the guy thinks he doesn't want what you got. So that's a big problem to resolve. There's a second problem. The second problem is that there was a company called Sticky Branding, and the guy that owns it wrote a book also called Sticky Branding. There you go, Wim's got it. And in that book, he basically introduces the 3% rule. And in my sales life and my marketing life and my business life, I have found that a wide diversity of people actually agree with that book. They'll quote it quite often. So it seems like it's landed and that people actually get that. And they've got, math and stats and all that. They've worked out why it's in fact 3% of any market that's actually buying at the moment. And that is dependent on the sales cycle, folks. If you have to buy coffee, say, and you buy it, Keurig things for your machine, and you're buying them every month, then there's 3% of the people are probably buying it every day. And that will times 30, that gets you to 90%. Say roughly the full market has bought their Keurig stuffs each month. But it's daily because the sales cycle is so fast with those coffee Keurigs. Now apply that to what you guys know. Remember at the beginning of the conversation, I said, I'm assuming that you know some stuff about MSP sales. And if you know anything about MSP sales, you know the flipping sales cycle is brutal. I mean, 6 months is actually on the good side. So I've had customers, well, prospects that I have marketed to and visited and chatted up for 8 years before they bought from me. But hey, when they bought, it was a 15 grand a month deal. Fine. It was worth the 8 years. But the point is, if I'd have got impatient at any time in those 8 years, I'd have lost them. Meanwhile, eventually they became big money for me. So back to the 3% rule. You have to, instead of Keurig, which is almost daily, you're chopping through your 3%. In our world, people are only shopping for IT services. Think how often people change their IT provider. They hate doing that. They actually wait until they have a merger, an acquisition, a major change, somebody like the owner retires, or they move offices. That's quite a good one. Often they'll change IT when they move offices. But there's got to be some monumental thing to make them even think about purchasing IT service. All I'm getting at is those long periods of time between the decisions mean that our sales cycle is very long. And so I'm going to say it takes 6 months. So 3% of the market, and you can hear I can justify this and I can go into it deeper if you want me to. But so I say 3% of the market will be shopping every 6 months. So it means 6% of the market is shopping each year. So that's a brutal, brutal fact that most people who are managers, who are looking at salesmen for MSPs, or who are MSP salespeople themselves, they will go to their list of people in their company, or the list of prospects, and they will say, oh, I close 20% of all the leads that I get. I can apply this and this and this kind of campaign and get this much results from my list. And therefore, I'll close 20% of them. And you won't. Only 6% of those are looking to purchase IT services each year. So when you apply that to your funnel, you find that the top of your funnel has to be very big indeed. And I have proved this in my sales career, guys. I have, if you look at, I've sold a bunch of MSP services, but if you look back, you'll find that when you do this division by how much was available to me versus how much I was actually selling, it's very reflective that it's actually 6% of your group that you're selling to at any one time per year. So that's something you guys can take away. You can take that away. You can do your own math, work backwards from your goals, and just remember that the starting point at the top of your funnel is you're going to put as many people as you put in there, and then only 6% of them are going to buy this year. And they might not all buy from you, remember? Only the ones that heard of you maybe buy from you, and then only 20% of those are going to do a deal because that's your close rate. If you've got a 25% close rate, muzzle tov, good luck to you. I only ever did 20%, which is, it's decent. It's not great. But the point is, it's 6%, and then you only close 20% of the 6%. Assuming you're being very efficient. That's very efficient. That means you're not missing anybody. So, you can take
that's
this
what I've
slide.
seen, like even like in our local MSP here, Improving IT, which I started 19 years ago. Like, hey, why are we not adding more clients locally? Well, hey, maybe there's like 500 to 1,000 businesses in the Chilliwack area, but most are really small, like below 5, 10 employees. So if you say 10 plus, that's really like under 100 companies. So that means that's
And now
like,
6% of that
and then there's competitors,
is
right?
6. It's 6. And then you've got to share that with your competitors. And then what's left is what you can close, and you've got to take maybe 20% of that. So, man, it gets rough really fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you know the math, then you can be cool with yourself, because a lot of people get depressed about this. And a lot of managers want to fire their salespeople and all that. Well, apply the math first and see if you're actually giving the guy a chance. Like 100 companies at the top of the funnel, that's not giving them a chance. That's no chance.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about this about working backwards, like how many can you manage, kind of to be adding a number of clients, adding a solid 1, 2, 3 clients a month, whatever it is. So there's that. I think Gary Pica talks about it, of the warm 250 concept,
Yep.
right?
So, yep. And you will hear me quote Gary Pica almost whenever I talk about MSP sales, because he's a total guru, and Paul Dipple as well. And I also follow Marcus Chan. I used to follow Paul and Gary, but they're kind of retired now. But Marcus Chan is amazing. So I follow him. But Gary Pica came up with this concept of the warm 250. And basically, MSP sales, you've heard me allude to it already on this conversation. It's relationship selling. It's consultative selling. And relationship selling means that actually I'm not measuring my activities, my cold activities. I'm measuring activities that reflect some arc or some spectrum of warming up of the customer, of the prospect relationship. That's instead of just looking at activity, I must be looking at warmth of a set group of customers that I've already decided are a target for me. And the way I do it is I specialize in certain verticals, certain industries, and then I target customers that are the right size and the right geography and the right problem set and all of that. We were talking about, do they need compliance, some kind of special compliance or whatever at the beginning of this talk. You go after them and decide who's going to be in your group based on all those things. There's many more. There's a whole webinar worth of how to decide which industries to go after. But the point is, once you've got them, Gary Pica calls it the warm 250. And that's because he says in his experience, you can only manage 250 sort of named accounts. I guess in other sales parlance, outside of Gary's terminology, they might be called named accounts, which are accounts that you're meant to nurture, even though they aren't your customers yet. They're literally a named group of prospects. And so Gary says there's only 250 that you can look after. But I say that Gary says 250 across the whole economy. So all kinds of industries. And yes, that's taxing when you've got all kinds of industries and you're trying to relate to 250 people. Like, what are you going to talk to them about? You're suddenly in front of someone who's in the fashion industry. What am I going to say to them? I haven't a clue. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. So you've got to, for me, instead of doing the warm 250 like Gary does, I go much bigger because of that brutal math that we're talking about. I go much bigger at the top of the funnel. I'm looking for 400, 500 companies, but I narrow them into maximum 4 industries because I've found that I can be really good at one industry, at knowing the ins and outs of their, you see, you don't have, people go, oh, well, I know IT, I can sell IT to anybody. Wrong. You can't sell MSP to anybody like that. The way to sell MSP is you have to have authority. They have to know that you know about their business. Otherwise, the CEO won't want to talk to you. And if he doesn't want to talk to you, you can't sell him. He'll keep telling you to talk to one of his minions, and they don't have the buying authority. So you've got to have enough authority that the CEO wants to talk to you. And to do that, you have to know his industry. And for me, without my head exploding, I found that I can only do 1 or 2 really well. So I've got 2 that I'm let's call it good. I'm good at 2. And then there's 2 more that I'm quite good at, that I can get by. You can put me at a dinner table with a whole lot of people who own companies in that industry, and I can talk about the industry all night without making a fool of myself. But I'm not super authoritative, whereas in the top 2 I am. So that's how I do it. I go much bigger than Gary at the top of the funnel. I go to 400 or 500, not 250. But I save my brain from exploding by narrowing those 400 or 500 into only 4 sectors. And Wim, this is about sales, but I want to tell you, when you narrow the MSP's sales down into four industries, 5 industries, if you've got 2 salesmen, you can do 8 industries. And really, 8 is a lot. Because now think of your ops guys. Think of your help desk people. They have to answer the phone and deal with problems from how many industries? 20? That's not good. They are not going to feel like they have mastered that environment. And it's true, they can't. Humans can't do that. Yeah. So you need to, and by the way, those level 1, 2, 3s, all your techs, in fact, are expert personalities. They want to feel mastery. And if you create a situation where they do feel mastery, they feel happy in their jobs and they will stay. And if they stay, they get better. And if they get better, guess what? All your customers talk to their friends, and then you sell more. And then they get better because you're selling more in certain verticals. So you're giving them an opportunity to get even better. And it becomes what I call a flywheel, like a virtuous cycle. And this goes to you your MSP creating authority in that industry. Now, suddenly, you're not dependent, Wim, and I know we wanted to talk about this too. You're not dependent on sheer sales skill. If your company has industry thread, has industry authority in a particular industry, now suddenly I can parachute any sales guy who's half good in there, and he can develop some kind of trust because they're trusting the company behind the guy. But if you haven't got those specializations, Wim, and here I'm getting into how ops and sales kind of mix together. All right. There's that flywheel, right? Where you need to let your ops people get really good so that their customers can talk about them. You can pick up those in case studies and stuff, and that helps you sell more in that industry. And then that makes the techs better in the industry because it's a flywheel, keeps feeding itself.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I was going to say next, but
So yeah,
maybe
you mentioned
maybe.
like if you know that industry well, you can go to their trade show conferences, association meetings, and they recognize you as you walk around, right? Hey, Garth,
Which
right?
is so good. Can you imagine that you're some guy who's in the healthcare industry or municipality or wherever you are, and you're at one of your conferences with all your industry buddies, and one of them goes, "Hey, there's that guy. He really knows his stuff about what? Well, he's a really good IT company." And you might have gone 6 months ago. We need to start looking for an IT company. When you hear your friends saying that, not the person's own marketing, your own friends saying that, or your own peers that you trust, the
Yeah.
guy's half in the bag already.
Yeah.
So that's how you build that. And sorry, Wim, I know I've picked up what I was trying to say earlier. That means that the MSP owner is not dependent on highly skilled MSP salespeople because there are very few of them and they're very expensive. So you want to create your own expensive, if you can even get them, by the way. Like you can throw as much money as you want, and it's just not enough to go
We
around.
looked and I couldn't find them. I was willing to pay and I just couldn't find them, right? So
Yeah, really. So, so what I'm trying to get at is, one of your first questions to me back before this webinar, when you were talking to me before, was how can we find good salespeople? And when you said that to me, I went on this tirade, which is all the stuff that I'm talking about now. But the bottom line of the tirade is the MSP owner and MSP top executives need to position their MSP that is so authoritative that they can then use relatively junior salespeople to do the sales because the authority and the trust is already
yeah.
established. But if you have to go establish trust and maintain it, remember, because they might not be buying this year, they might be buying in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
That is serious sales skill to maintain trust and a relationship over all those years. Like I'm saying about that guy that bought after 8 years, there's not many salespeople that can do that. So you don't want to put your company in that position. So how do you get out of that? You specialize in certain areas and you let your techs get really good and you let your salespeople get used to selling that and get somewhat authoritative themselves, and it all starts to work together. But if you're going after 20 different industries, you're toast. And you're going to have to then hire a total MSP genius to sell for you. And God help you, you probably won't find that.
Yeah. So the key here is not being an expert in the sales skills necessarily or in the technology. And it's not about the company maybe technically being a better MSP than the other five in town, but being an expert in that uh, industry, right? Really knowing them intimately, intimate knowledge of them.
Yes, because if you know them really well, in the first, I usually try in the first 2 sentences or 3 sentences of meeting a new person in that industry, I will drop something current that I heard on a podcast last week, or I read in one of their industry articles last week. I will drop it quick, and I know it's super relevant, and it really gets traction with them.
Yeah.
In 1 minute, they have established that you know their game.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the best image I found for nurturing the 250. And by the way, the 250 is an interesting number in psychology Because that's typically the max you'd see at somebody's wedding or somebody's funeral. Like that's just how many people you can manage relationships on.
Okay.
That's the psychology of that, right? Just or the sociology. I don't know what the right word is, but the science behind that.
Okay, cool. Well,
But
you see, Gary Peak is a smart guy. He probably knew all
I
that
remember
stuff.
him saying that years ago, right? And Robin Robbins,
Oh,
other people said that too, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even like,
So,
so if you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, they're not your friends. That's just acquaintances, right?
oh, bummer, man. Wim, I was hoping they were my friends.
So yeah, nurturing the 250 and what you shared was very different than what I expected. I thought, wow, so many emails per week, so many calls per week, and what's your activity? But where you've spent your time was really understanding that space, what's going on. So tell me more about what does your week, your day look like with nurturing and knowing that space?
Yeah. So nurturing the 250 and your spearfishing thing was relevant because again, it's about MSP sales is better done in a sort of a named account type headspace where you actually are, instead of just blasting your story out to the world and hoping somebody calls you back, which all MSPs on this webinar today probably know that doesn't work because they've all tried it. So have I. And it flat out doesn't work. But instead, what you do is you pick your verticals, you pick your industries very carefully, and there's another webinar on how to do that. But once you pick them, you then establish who the leaders are in those industries, and you start to relate to them. I've got many people who are connected with me on LinkedIn. And they're not, bellmen and car wash people and stuff. They're decision makers. And I've got about 7,000 of them. And they're segmented mostly, roughly, into the areas that I have authority in. And I follow them. But there's some people that actually have not accepted my little request to be first level friends. But you know what? On LinkedIn, you can still follow those people. They can't stop you from doing that. So I follow them. They haven't accepted my thing, but I follow them anyway. And it means that when they pop up with something really interesting, and remember, I'm watching podcasts, I'm looking at the articles in the magazines that I know they're reading, not magazines I necessarily want to read, although I'm vaguely interested because you have to be, otherwise you just won't have the energy to do it all. I am interested in these verticals that I'm specialized in. And because I'm doing all that, when they make a comment that's relevant to that or may be relevant to that, I can respond. And I'll just respond and I'll do it several times. And the first few times, especially if the guy's very senior or the lady's very senior, they'll ignore you. But after a while, they actually warm up like that. So, and by the way, like we've been talking about these long sales cycles, it's a long sales cycle. So you've got time. Just spend an hour or two every day on LinkedIn, which is, you say, what does my day look like? I spend an hour or two on LinkedIn. I do posts on LinkedIn, but I should be better. My aim is to do it once a week. I probably do it more like once every 2 or 3 weeks. It will be much better to do it once a week. But I'm not so religious about my posting, but I am very religious about responding to people that are in my sort of spearfishing list. And it's easy to build up groups like that. You can just go and look for, like, once you know an industry, you know that the senior person in, say, a radiology practice is not called the CEO. The decision is probably the top doctor. He'll be called the principal or the partner, senior partner. There's various ways, and you can search on LinkedIn for them.
Yeah.
So that's how you contact with those. And then I spend a little bit of my week working on case studies. So I'm taking stuff that our ops guys are already doing well, and I'm interviewing the people so that I can make a case study. But I'm taking case studies that are very precise. They fit into what is concerning my industry at that time. And so I will hit the problem in conversation somewhere, and I'll say, we just dealt with that I got a very interesting case study. It's only 2 minutes on YouTube. Can I send you that? Most people won't say no to you.
Yeah.
And I send it to them right there when I'm in front of them. So I go, did you get that?
Even if
So,
they're happy and saying, I'm fine, I'm happy with my current IT provider, it still creates a wedge because they're like, wow, you understand our space better and my company better. And so I think it's creating a wedge already, even when they're happy.
you've got it, man. And so that's you. You say, well, how do I spend my day? I spend my day, my week, also creating wedges, also selling wedges. So things like IT assessments of the people's environments. Um, certain cybersecurity stuff, certain line of business deployments. So you deploy line of business software that's central, like the leading software in their industry. You get good, or people who are good at deploying that, so that you deploy it together. And that creates a wedge, because while I'm deploying your software, your line of business software, like your radiology software or your radiology server, and I might not be your IT guy. I just got brought in by the company that does your radiology software to do the deployment. I can find out all about you. And if I do really well at my job, which hopefully I will do, they'll go, man, those guys are good. And they know that you also do help desk and daily IT.
Yeah.
So, and that you specialize in their industry. So you're half in the bag. Are they next time they're looking for an IT guy, and they're not going to fire the IT guy tomorrow just because they like you? Of course, we know that. We've all tried that. It doesn't work. You're going to have to stick around until they decide to look for new IT guys. And that could be a long time, like I keep saying. But that's why you need 400 or 500, and you need to be specialized, and you need to keep hitting them. So if I spend 1 or 2 hours a day on LinkedIn, that's because I'm talking to a lot of people on LinkedIn. In fact, LinkedIn keeps sending me little stuff saying, you're one of our most active people. Here's a gold star for you, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then conferences, you got to go to conferences, because that's where you can, I call it ambushing, not to the customer, or to the prospect. But in my view, if somebody won't talk to me, if they're going to a conference and I'm going to a conference, I know they're going to talk to me. I'll walk behind them on their way to coffee. I'll just, and when they're in the lineup, I'll line up behind them and just wait. And they'll go, hey, aren't you so-and-so? Then we go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we got a bit more to get through here yet, but if you got questions, put them in the Q&A, or if you're already learning something that you think you could or should implement or pass on to your team, pop it in the chat. We want to hear. To share what you're learning, what's useful. Maybe it's reinforcing something you knew already and you need to do. Um, but good, yeah. So the basking in the glow, and we got this particular picture here, Garth.
Yeah. So, Wim, you've got the heading hiring basking in the glow.
Yeah,
And that we have kind of touched on that
yeah,
already on this
we did.
webinar. Beg your pardon?
Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, the idea of this, yeah, you can get your sales rep up to speed a lot quicker because they're feeding
Because
the
because
organization.
there's authority behind him.
Yeah,
Yeah. And he doesn't need to be a complete rock star to build that trust and create that authority on his own. Like, that's hard, man. And
yeah,
but if you've already got the authority as a business, and you can just say, well, he's representing us in that industry. Don't think that just because you're authority in one industry, you can go and sell to everybody. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about today. So that's like basking in the glow. There is a story about Marriott, which is like, goes to how authority helps you sell. Do you want me to quickly tell that story?
yeah. I think it's worth sharing. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'll try and do it in 2 minutes or less.
Okay.
So we had this prospect, Marriott, a Marriott hotel. You can imagine, very big, very corporate, very risk averse, all the stuff, all reasons why they're not going to talk to us. And but I know how to work them. I'm working them gently, like the ways I've been talking to you guys today about. And so I've still got them. I got them half in the bag, but they're not deciding, and they kind of hedging. You can see they're kind of hesitant, right? So eventually I say to them, well, wouldn't you want to talk to some of our hotel customers? And they go, yeah, that would be useful. And then I drop the next thing. I start with customers, and they think, yeah, everybody's got customers. And then I say, we got 4 Marriott hotel customers. And you can see they prick up straight away. Marriott, that's us. So in other words, I'm not a freak if I choose you, right? Because they don't want to be caught out. They don't want to be like fired for booking for using you. So if there's 4 of their buddies, they can blame their buddies that actually said you were good. So I say, yeah, we got 4 Marriott hotels already. And then the third thing I said to them is the hook, where I say, which one of the 4 would you, or which one or all of the 4 would you like to talk to? You choose. So it means that I didn't go to my one buddy who's one of the 4 Marriotts and like buy him 4 bottles of wine and beg him to be nice about me and sign some kind of reference letter. That is, forget about it. You have to have real interactions with people they trust. So I said to them, yeah, you pick. I won't pick, you pick. And they picked one, and a week later they signed. So how's that? Is that 2 minutes?
Yep. 2 minutes bang on there. Yeah. Okay.
And what's the moral of the story? We could only do that because we were specialized in hotels. But it gives you real power when you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the poll, it sounds like about half of the people here are specialized in industries and the other weren't. It was like split 50-50 there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. I frankly think 50% is a high number. So that's good.
Yeah. But I think we can all learn more about our industries and our spaces, like more podcasts, more journals, or just sit down with them and ask them about their world and don't talk about tech. Like, this is what's going on. Like, we got to be students of that space,
You've
right?
got to
Study.
shut up and listen to them.
Yeah.
They will tell you their problems. Just shut up.
Yeah.
And when they do, oh, now you got traction.
Tell me more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Live.
But they
So,
won't tell you, here's the flip side. They won't tell you their problems if they think that you're just the next IT sales schmuck that's going to talk to them about speeds and feeds. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. If they're so interested in speeds and feeds, you know what? They can go buy a PC magazine or something and load up. And none of them do that, because guess what? They're radiologists. They're not interested in computers.
yeah. And I just going back like about 10 years ago when I was doing the True Method stuff with Gary Pica, as I was doing his inside outside sales model. And I think we're executing pretty good on that. So I had like an SDR. I guess today we'd call an SDR, sales development or business development rep, and calling and getting appointments. And I'd go through the whole process and they wouldn't buy. I think it's just I didn't really understand the world, right? I wasn't doing the things you're saying here. So I had a good package with the full cake and all in and everything. But they're like, yeah, I'm fine. Right. So the relationship and the farming aspect wasn't there. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, but you got to deliver on the promise. So I think that operational excellence and how we deliver the projects, the service is vital as well. So how did you build that out or structure your team?
Well, I mean, I think the tools like top left are very much focused on that sort of thing. And I was not a good operational leader. Way back at the beginning of this webinar, you'll see that you can see our MSP, like some of the stuff was good, but some of the stuff was really bad. And it was not operationally sound until we got a good ops manager. And then it literally, then you see all the graphs take off together. But at the beginning, it was kind of bumpy, and then they take off together. It's quite clear to see when the ops manager started. So how to do great ops? You need the right tools, you need the right talent in there. But to tie it back to what I've been going on about in this webinar, you need that flywheel, Wim. You need the flywheel of we're authoritative. We have command of these typical environments. And we know what we're doing here. And that makes your techs feel really good about themselves because they want to be expert. They're expert personalities. Otherwise, they wouldn't be techs. So they need that. And then you need them to be really good as the salesperson. You need them to be really good because otherwise you don't have current case studies that you can take to prospects. So the two are feeding on each other. And I think the two parts need to be really close together to each other to kind of develop that flywheel really well. And if there's salespeople on the webinar, which is probably mostly salespeople, not ops, but the salespeople need to realize that these ops guys, remember what I said, they are expert personalities. They are very threatened by new stuff. They want to understand it first. So you can't bring them a plethora of new weird projects. All you do is freak them right out. They don't want to talk to you. They want to leave the company. They believe me, it affects them really badly. As salespeople, we need to narrow it down. We need to ask ops what they need from a project, and we need to actually go out in a very structured way and hunt only those. And that means that you can't get commission breath and start to hunt absolutely everything that moves. You need to be very clear about what you're good at and what your company's good at, and your techs will love you when you start to do that. I've done it all, guys. I've brought them a mixed bag of flipping nasty stuff, bottom trawl off the bottom of the ocean with some of the scariest fish you ever saw. And of course they hated it. And slowly over time, I realized, hey, these guys need structure. They're techs, that's what they do. And I need to be more structured in what I bring to them. Otherwise, all I do is I put them in fight or flight mode, and I can't talk to them. And then I think they're assholes, and they think I'm an asshole, and nobody's going anywhere.
Yep. Okay, and then I guess you also shared once you sold the company, then your sales went up, right? You were closing more. Why was that?
Yes, well, the sales went down to start.
A little bit, yeah.
So we sold the company just after COVID, and a lot of we had a lot of hotel and a lot of healthcare people. The healthcare people were booming, but the hotel people were dropping off, and so as a result of that, we lost quite a few people, quite a few customers, like 2 or 3 quite decent size, 6-7 grandos times 2 or 3. So it was probably 20 grand dip. So the guy that bought the company wasn't very happy about that. But we worked around it. And then there's a further dip when there's natural attrition when you sell a company, like the new company comes in, the new ownership and stuff, and not all of your customers actually relate to these new guys 100%. So some of them fell off again. So you see it dipped for 2 years in a row. Dipped first because of COVID, and then second because of the sale. And then it took off. And yes, the reason why it took off was I didn't have anything to do. It wasn't part of the deal that I would sell for them. It was there, 2021, right? Yeah, where the yellow and the red graph end and the blue graph goes on. By the way, the yellow and the red graph end because at that stage I was not the owner of the company and I had no visibility into how many seats and stuff like that. I didn't know, so I didn't put it in there. But I did know the MRR because I was selling it. I was selling it all. So all I would do was I'd take my MRR that I sold each year and add it to the MRR at that low point that we sold to them. And that's how I worked out what the actual MRR was. I think it's pretty accurate. So, and how did that happen? They came to me and I didn't have anything to do. And they said, have you thought about if you want to sell for us maybe? And I said, that'd be very interesting, but I'd like to see how much I can sell if I'm not also the CEO of the company, because I'm not a natural CEO. You've heard me say it several times. I'm not an operational guy. I'm definitely a vision guy and I'm a sales guy and stuff like that. But anyway, so I said, yeah, let me give it a go. And, the company that I took just over 10 years, the MSP part of the company that I took just over 10 years to build, I doubled that in 3 years because I was devoted to selling. But almost all the way, yes, the grace of God, I believe me, I pray a lot. Because I don't know, this is not easy stuff. and I need all the help I can get. But also I applied what I'm talking to you about today.
Yeah. Okay. And there was just one question we had here. I think it was a question and not a statement, but from Dustin around how to know when I walk away from a solid lead. And his example is they're not willing to spend. Um, but I think that's if you're not willing to spend and maybe not seeing value or it's just the timing, right? There's the marketing math, but kind of everyone's not willing to spend right now, right? That's
Yeah. Well, actually, they'll be willing to spend. There's a way to talk to them, right? That's all part of that. Gary Pica calls it tipping that emotional balance. You come alongside them and you start to understand what their real problems are. And if you can show them that you can solve their real problems with one or two IT tweaks, they will throw money at that, especially if you're solving issues with like inefficiency of their staff, because they know if you can make their staff 10% more efficient, multiplied by a $300,000 a month salary bill or $1 million a month salary bill, 10% on that, and all you're asking them for is 9 grand a month, they're not stupid. They will go for that in a heartbeat. They do, but you need to lead them there, and that's that tipping of the balance. I totally agree with Dustin, though. There are some people that are just deadbeats, and you must run. You must absolutely don't waste your time. We got too much to do. We can't talk to those people. Like be kind, but just say I had certain MSPs that I used to tell them to go and call. I used to say you should talk to these guys. They do your kind of business. They're really good.
they'd be a good
And
fit for you.
off
Yeah.
they'd go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yeah. And you said it was interesting. You shared that your ops manager was using Trello as well to visualize projects, right? Just simple
Yes.
tools. So,
Because as we grew, the number of projects, was accelerating. And somebody need to keep on top of that. It's like project portfolio management, right? You got multiple projects running at the same time. You're constrained as far as IT resources, tech resources are concerned. You need to protect your tech's mental well-being and all that. Yeah, and so she was using Trello to juggle all that.
yeah. Okay. Well, we are at the top of the hour here. So, I don't, yeah, if you guys want to, Garth and I really don't have anything to sell here, but if you want to chat with Garth, he's not really selling consulting or anything, but I think you can message him on LinkedIn and he'll probably answer a question or two, right? So,
Totally.
and then,
Very happy to.
and if you want to reach out conversation about top left, you can find me. I'm on the, obviously my email is everywhere on these events and, or go to the website and book a demo. So, that's it in terms of a pitch. This is just a give and helping everyone with sales. And I think this is a lot more than sales. It's positioning and serving the client, customer service excellence. It touches everything. It's not just for the salesperson. It's got to be company wide. Um, just the industry specialization and knowing them. Like the techs need to know in hospitality, it's very different than healthcare, right? What's the lingo and the problems and the people and the personas and personalities
Absolutely.
involved, right?
Absolutely.
It's got to be in the tribal knowledge, in the training. In the first week, you got to be, they got to be drinking from that fire hose and get up to speed on all of these things.
Yeah. And the only way to do that without freaking them out is to let them specialize. Imagine trying to do that with 20 different industries.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It
Yeah.
can't be done.
Yeah.
Not well, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming and being part of this. Thank you again, Garth, for your massive give here. I think you've put like 6 or 7 hours into this, so I appreciate you on doing this. So, um, yeah,
You're
enjoy
welcome,
it.
man. It's great. I love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're very passionate about sales and helping people and everything. So, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone, and see you around. See you next time.
Cheers. See you, Wim.
Adios.